Hey guys, it's Sean with Custom Offsets TV on the YouTube. We got another shit I never knew for you. We've been hearing this from day one and we finally are gonna make a video on it. Just been kind of thinking about it. Rather than delivering smart responses to you guys, we're gonna go with actually explaining it. And this is gonna be fit for me. Every single time we post up a Ram 1500, a Ram 2500, a Super Duty, and we've got 12 wides and 35s, somebody chimes in and says, what the F, I got that to fit and I got 37s. Why did you guys have to trim for 35s? And literally what I think people are doing is they're looking at the size of the tire compared to our size of our tire and they're saying, it fit for me, it should fit for you guys. I don't understand why you're trimming. The problem is they're not putting all the math together. So what we've done is we've built this beautiful display for you guys so that we can kind of walk through the whole fitment concept. So we'll give you this bird's eye view also so that you can really look into this. But what we've done is this is the front of our truck. So this is your front bumper. This is your driver's side front tire, your front left tire if you're here in America. This is the cab corner. This is gonna be your axle shaft, your CV, your hub, and your lower control arm or upper control arm. This is, the control arm got a little out of control, so just bear with me. It's over exaggerated so that you can see it easily. And this is our stock OEM size 32.5-inch tire. It's a 265/65 or 265/60 R20 and with a 20-inch wheel. So when you look down on this thing, what you're gonna see is basically, I always picture it like the quarterback in the pocket when they first come out of the snap. They've created this perfect little safe, happy zone where as long as this tire is in here, it does awesome stuff and it does its job and it doesn't bump into anybody else and it just has a good old time. So this is what the engineers said. Let's create this pocket. What they're doing, however, is they're creating a pinch point here and they're creating a pinch point here and they're also creating a rub point back here where those upper or lower control arms, depending on the vehicle, whichever one gets closest to it, where this factory wheel is good and happy because it's hitting bump stops before it, or not bump stops, the full lock. It's hitting the full lock stops before it hits in the control arms and all that other stuff. 32.5, this is probably like a 8.5-inch wide plus 31 offset. Now what happens is, we move away from the 8.5 wide with a positive offset and we move into, there's this bad boy. If you didn't know, you can always find your width and offset on the back of the wheel. This has got a 20/9 plus 14. So we went a 1/2 inch wider on the wheel and we went like 15 millimeters, I don't know what's the math, 17 millimeters less positive. So as that happens, what's happening is this hub, where your hub locks into the wheel, is headed this way. And with the width, the wheel and tire are headed that way. We now bolt that up, and if you come over here and look fuller, it starts to push out on the front of this. And now what happens is, when we turn, you're starting to smash into this. So you have to go in here and you have to remove a little bit of that valence. And you turn this way and it rubs just a little bit, so you might just let it rub and it'll just wear a little bit off of that corner. So a 9 wide plus 14, you're not gonna get into too much stuff, especially if you've now leveled the truck, because you're bringing that up a little bit. And the size tire is probably 33/12.5. That's what everybody buys. Of course, it's 285/50 to prove me wrong. This is actually fairly close to that stock size tire. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna ditch that one and we're gonna get even more aggressive. And check it out. And now we're going to bump up to, sometimes it's on your outer edge, if it's not on the back of one of the spokes. -18 offset, probably a 20/10, 20/10. So I've got a 20/10 -18 and probably a 35. 35/12.5. I roll that into the same pocket, and voila. Now when I start turning, that 35 is smashing into all of this stuff. I've got to remove this whole front corner of the bumper. I turn it this way, it's smashing into all this stuff. I got to start creating what we call a mini NorCal. A lot of times what you can get away with is you can keep this outer edge, and then you just remove a pocket in here, creating this new travel spot. Because if you look at it, what's happening, see how this is a flat? It's geometry. As this turns, this is gonna get close to it, and as that suspension flexes, this is gonna get even closer and closer to it. That's why a lot of times you don't hear it rub until you get to full lock, because you're hitting that. So that is why you have to start trimming, and ideally if you're good at it, you can make it look like it was born that way, and you start to create, you get rid of that pinch point basically. Now, when you go really crazy, and you want to get yourself some of them specialty Fords, fancy ass wheels, and some 36.5 by 15s, now you got to put in some work. So now if you're looking down at this thing, I cheated even, tried to make it look better than it is. And you're way outside that wheel well, you're going to, when you turn, you're going to clip this entire corner of the bumper off. So now you've really got to make some room. Commonly called the SEMA beaver, because the SEMA guys are trying to push all those edges. Sometimes the guys will even have to get in here and do full-blown body work and basically change that entire corner. Or they just don't go full lock so that they don't hit right there. And then usually this one will suck in and clear. Here's another thing that people don't realize. My truck never rubs except for when I back out of my driveway while turning. You got to remember, it doesn't turn like this, because sometimes you're going forward and it causes it to turn like this, and it tips that wheel in or out. When you go backing, tearing out of a driveway in reverse, and you've got it cranked like this, it's going to kick the bottom of this tire out, and that's why you hear it rub for the first time on the front of this liner, because you're basically kicking it forward because you're causing a drag when you crank that wheel, and that's why that thing rubs. One more thing I want to show you. We're gonna have to pretend fuller. I'm gonna grab this really strange, tiny, no offset wheel. Ready for some off-roading. And we're gonna pretend that I went with my stock tire, or a positive 30 offset 8.5 wide, but I put this big fat meaty tire on here. And now what happens is, because it's still the same distance here, but you've created this giant sidewall that wasn't there when you had a stock setup, now you start rubbing into here. So then people start to rub on the control arms because you've created this big balloon, or you've gone from a 10-inch wide tire to a 12-inch wide tire. Even though you haven't changed the wheel, you're creating this big balloon on top of that wheel, and they didn't allow the clearance in here, so you'll rub on either the inside, the front, or the rear of that control arm when you try to pivot, and that's what you're running into. So the other fact is, and I can probably show this best with my chalk, if I'm running a 33, let's say factory 32, and I drop a straight line, I'm running in here. And now I go up to 37s, I'm here. Remember, as I increase my width and offset, I'm moving everything. I should say increase my width and decrease my offset, less positive or even into the negatives. I'm moving everything this direction. And that's why as you have more width and lower offset, especially to the negative offset, you're still the same size tire, but you keep dragging it out here. And remember, this is where we had our pinch points before we went and SEMA beavered the shit out of this. And that's why as you move it out, even the same size tire, the 37s start to hit, because you've moved out of that pocket. Remember the NFL? You got your pocket, you've moved out of it. So now you're gonna get your ass sacked, unless if you go in here and do some trimming. Same thing. And now you're clear. That's all I have to know about that. I'm absolutely exhausted. I've broken a sweat piece.